Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Keep It Science. We are back and with a bit of a twist. This time we are shining a light on rare diseases, from insights from biotech leaders and specialist clinicians to personal stories from the people impacted the most. Now, we say rare, but over 300 million people live with rare diseases. That's roughly about 1 in 20 people face years of diagnostic journeys with limited treatment options and struggle with diseases for the rest of their lives due to a lack of a cure.
I'm Dr. Elizabeth Kugler, and for me this season is incredibly personal. I have myself a rare autoimmune disease, which includes scleroderma, dermatomyositis, and secondary Raynaud's, which is called an overlap disease. And so as a scientist and rare disease patient, I hope to contribute insights from both of these worlds in this season.
And I'm Dr. Nick Gorn, and together with Elizabeth and a variety of guests, we'll explore everything in rare diseases, the science, the stories, the struggles, and most importantly, these exciting breakthroughs that we're seeing every single day.
Hello and welcome. In this episode of Keep It Science, we talk about science communication in medicine. And so we will explore how medical science is communicated beyond academic journals and conferences into clinics, public spaces, policy rooms, and culture. Because science communication increasingly really shapes how people understand illness, risk, and care. And it is really also in everyday conversations. So joining me today is Kondwani Chirwa, a science communicator working across medicine, public engagement, and creative platforms. And his work includes projects with the NHS, the Manchester Health Film Festival, and initiatives such as Cardio Conversations, all about which we're going to talk about today because I'm really excited for this. And so firstly, thank you so much for joining us and welcome, Kondwani.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure being here and being part of this. I'm really excited and looking forward to the conversations we can unfold and just explore topics that I know are very close to our hearts, and just exploring, see how we can be of more value, as I would say, in tapping into people's needs and also helping shape solutions that one might not have seen initially.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And so firstly, I really want to set the scene for people who might not, work in science communication, especially in medicine, because it is very, very challenging. And so you worked across healthcare and culture and public engagement. Could you maybe share with us, how you would define science communication in medicine and where it really shows up in practice?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. Based on my experiences, I always like to refer through the experiences. I see it as a greater need and way of simplifying things, but not making them simplistic, as I would like to say. So it's that nature of talk to me like I'm 5 mindset. And in my walks of life, from the vocations I'm into, because I run a social enterprise, Freshrb C.I.C, also known as Freshrb Health Media, through those experiences and the excuses that I have to bring and the conversations I have every day. I like how you said everyday people conversations, everyday people talking health kind of thing. It's giving me greater insights into the need for a more concise, more not precise in the sense, but almost like targeted messaging, and just taking it to the next kind of realm of evolution in communications. So that's how I see it. I don't know if I've given you the right answer, but yes, I've got, I could draw more from the tank that I've got.
Is there one right answer? That's the whole thing, right? I think, so you and I have known each other, I think probably for about half a year now. We had really regular discussions, and it's so nice to see that both of us come to science communication from very different angles. And I think that makes it so interesting. And this is why we actually decided to record this episode, because we thought exactly these differences make it so interesting. So I'm myself a scientist and also a rare disease patient, and I lead a science marketing company. But you come from digital media background, and you also have a long-term health condition, and you lead more of like a digital and creative media agency. And you mentioned some of the projects already, but I think it would be really good if people understand a little bit more, the different spaces that you work in. So for example, you run a podcast, you're involved in a film festival. Could you maybe just tell us a little bit more about these different, kind of fragments or different experiences that you're running and where you're trying to really combine them all into one jigsaw almost?
Yeah, so that's do you know what? I think I'll roll back a little bit, just give people a bit of a snapshot the whys behind everything that we do and what I'm about. So I live with a health condition known as myalgic encephalomyelitis, and at the time when I was diagnosed, I was at university, got diagnosed, and that was around 2011 official diagnosis. Going through the challenges and moving back to my parents' home, I discovered that there was there was a way I had to survive in a sense and make my everyday worthwhile. And so my drive and passion for problem solving, believe it or not, I was studying chemical engineering, so that's what it is. It all adds up. I was able to then utilize kind of appreciating different things that were working, including the medication, and because there's no cure for what I've got, myalgic encephalomyelitis, ME/CFS. But in my kind of problem solving adventures, I discovered that being creative was very, very powerful and helped me with the kind of slowing down the degradation of my mental health space. And so from those experiences and my love for very specific around film and movies, but media-esque, because I also write poetry, but that's a story for another day. um, yeah, I use that to kind of like shape and use as a therapeutic tool, as many tools. So then 2014, when I met my very good friend Babs, we ran this social enterprise together. He had set up Freshrb, and he just converted it to a community interest company. So it's Freshrb C.I.C. And he went through similar experiences, but for him, he was diagnosed with cancer. And then after going back into the working world, the desire to just give back with experiences at the BBC, media was a two. And so when we met, really, our visions were pretty much aligned. And so it was the question of, how then can we kind of help the public understand marginalized health conditions, but then also long-term health conditions where there is little known? And then on the other side, how do we help people with lived experience of health conditions and, funnily enough, rare disease and disabilities kind of be a voice and be able to share their voice? And that's where the podcast side of things was also birthed, and which is Everyday People Talking Health podcast, where I have a chat with people with lived experience of health, and also people who care for somebody in a similar situation or who've cared for in the past. Because I find this true wealth in getting those stories, because it's something we can always learn from. And I believe even for the general public, and by general public I mean people in different fields, can find inspiration of some sort. And then on the other side, the Manchester Health Film Festival, it says on the tin, is films. And that was very, very keen. And I remember when myself and Babs were thinking of how we can then amplify. So one of the things we do is, because we make short films, every short film we make, we do a premiere. But then the premieres are usually localized in a local community or local community cinema. But then people always ask for more. And so because of that desire, we thought, right, what if we created a festival out of it? And so 2024, the festival was launched. And from then on, that was the first iteration. The second iteration is this year on the 13th and 14th of November, but I'm going to send more details around that. But the whole idea is that creators, filmmakers share their pieces of work around films, documentaries, animation, and any other experimental creative kind of content, but all health themed. So touching on a health theme or raising awareness explicitly about a health theme or health condition of some sort. And then we also bring and invite whether it's research groups, organizations, and the healthcare sector, any organization to come and kind of like share what the works they do. And so that was a huge success. And so again, back to the thing of when people ask for more. So then we thought, right, the next iteration then has to be bigger, better, and brighter, as I would say. And then we chose, right, it's going to be over 2 days then this time round. And different venues, View Cinema, View Cinema Printworks in Manchester, that's going to be. But already submissions are going through the roof. And then on the other aspect of things is then using the experiences of what we have to bring and share as Freshrb Health Media, because we do films, as I've already mentioned. Podcasting is another arm, creative designs, video productions, and also kind of co-designing research initiatives or pathways, engagement. So around health engagement, because health communications is where we play at. And so marrying those things together, in a sense, it's also enabled us to co-create or co-design some initiatives that have happened within the communities. And outside Greater Manchester as well, funny enough, because we do some projects as well across the country. But yeah.
Lovely, thank you. And I think the most important one is the why, right? To come back to this, why do you get up every single day? Why do you do what you do? And I love that. I love that because it's so, so important. And obviously, I think as someone with chronic illness that has no cure, and like you say, having to understand your own medication, the treatment, you add so much value in also bringing your lived experience in, for example, how you communicate science. And especially one thing that you kind of touched on is this co-design of research and communication, because obviously you can bring in your science insights, your media insights, and your patient insights. So that is a really, really unique combination, which I love. And we actually wanted to talk later on about the cardio conversations, but I think maybe we bring it in now because it's such a fitting theme, because cardio conversations is a very, very special project for everyone, because I watched a few and it's really insightful and, you know, meaningful. And I think that is the important thing, the why, right? If you watch something and you go away from it and you feel like, you know, you really can empathize and you can feel and you can, you know, take something away from this that really stays with you for days, that is the best science communication that you can create, right? And I think you really nailed this with cardio conversations. So maybe you can tell our listeners what cardio conversations are and why they should absolutely listen to it.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And you know what? It's one of those, like, because of the podcast production side of things and how we always have an opportunity we give to people sharing their lived experience of health. People in the circles and outside the circles kind of observe that, you know, you forget that, you know, the work you're doing actually has got impact. And because of that, a proposition came through. We were approached and we were asked to, well, the problem was, how can we engage better and communicate with the communities? And it was around cardiovascular disease awareness and prevention, and CVD. So I might short it CVD, but that's how it came. It was presented as. So we just came up with the solutions amongst many, but one of them we proposed was we can do a podcast, and then that's how we can take it forward, generate those conversations, because there is power in when people can either relate, but then also see people having a conversation around something that most of the time it feels like it's one way. And so cardio conversations, so then we call it cardio conversations. The whole purpose is to help destigmatize all the notion around what it means to have CVD related symptoms, and just to destigmatize again the whole notion of, oh, maybe there's nothing I can do about it, but actually simplifying it, because there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do to minimize and reduce blood pressure if you already have it. If you don't, how you can minimize the probability of having that, and also other factors around diabetes that are linked to the cardiovascular disease basket, as I would say. And so we created five specific podcasts tailored around the conversations, all with specific standouts, because we've got people with lived experiences of it and experts as well, and also like ourselves were on there anchoring and kind of sparing on. So yeah, you can watch that on the Health Films TV. That's our YouTube page, and also it's still on Spotify on Everyday People Talking Health podcast. For more.
One thing that you already touched on is obviously this kind of separation almost of science in the lab and science in everyday conversations and in like our daily lives. And obviously there's a lot of different aspects that fall into this, but maybe you could talk with us a little bit about, you know, your view on what causes or kind of reasons are there that there's such a huge kind of disparity between lab science and kind of, you know, the things that we see in everyday life, and some of the things that you do, and you already touched on like podcast and film, but maybe some other points to, you know, how can we overcome that?
I'm trying to pick which fabric I should then pick. Right. Okay, cool. So the beautiful thing that I would like those in the research labs and in the institutions and like in academia, basically, and any other field that I missed out, is that we value your work. And I say we, standing from somebody with a lived experience with chronic illness, right? And then also as a general public, so I wear that hat. But then also as an advocate, so as a health communicator and and expert in that your work needs to kind of come out, but in a greater light than what it looks like in the background. So I like to say, like there's things we do in the kitchen, but then in the restaurant, when you see it, you go, wow. But for the audience, that's the people in the restaurant, they need to be wowed by the amazing information, i.e. food that's placed in front of them. So I'm simplifying it that way because that's how simple the messaging needs to be, and the powerful work that gets done in the labs. And the reason I say that is because there's already this notion, almost like a barrier, that perception that people have of, oh, they think they know it all, right? But then actually, they don't know it all. That's the whole point of science. Science is about testing things out, trying things out, the hypothesis. That's why it's called hypothesis, and always improving on that new information. We move on from that. And so getting the general public to understand that aspect of things will go a long way. But then when they see the amazing work you're doing, that even goes a long way, because then they can engage with it and they can appreciate what it means, why they need to engage, why they need to use it. Why should I bother taking a vaccine? Like, what for? But because I'm aware of the benefits and the therapeutic aspects of it, I'll be like, okay, you know what? I'll take it on. Now, if I still did not understand, I'll ask more questions. So the last thing I ever want is somebody to say, well, if you don't get it, you don't get it. That's a huge mistake. You try to meet people where they're at, because from people outside the labs, people outside those institutions, they're focusing on other things. They're thinking about other things. And it's almost like it's a two-way street, right? And the same thing goes for the general public. It's that open-mindedness of wanting to kind of be curious. But then that's where, I guess, with yourself, Elizabeth, and myself, we come in kind of like to help people come to the table and have those conversations. Because what's the point of a breakthrough if nobody's going to engage with it? And what's the point of forcing people if really it does more harm? Because then the distrust grows bigger. And we know what that means. That means bigger problems further down the line, generational wise as well. But yes, I feel the amazing work that's being done needs to be shouted about, because there's such beautiful works and breakthroughs. And where people feel they're wrong, or they've not fine-tuned something, again, putting your hands up and saying, oh, okay, you know what? It's part of the science journey. And so how can we make it better for the consumer, i.e. the general public? So, yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much. And there's so many different threads to it, like you say, this fabric that we could talk about each one for hours and hours. So I'm just going to pick on a few of them, because I think one thing was like bringing everyone to the table. And I think that's the most important thing, right? To bring, as you say, the public, the patients, the policymakers, the scientists in the lab, everyone to the table, which is hopefully what your and our podcast is really trying to do, to get all the insights also from carers, which are often left out. And that's so, so important. But I think also the thing that you said is like, people need to know. And I think that's the thing that, you can do the best science in the world, but if no one knows about it, what do you do? Right? People need to know about your work, and they need to know, in a way, as you say, where they are at, so you can really, pick up that conversation from wherever that person is, because it could even be the mindset on that day, right? If I'm thinking, yeah, me, if I'm thinking about this, I'm not going to be here. So yes, so that is really, really important. And I think also the thing that you and I we have spoken about in the past is that we're both also health advocates. So we're trying to work in policy making, but also consulting pharma, because it goes the other way as well, right? It doesn't go from bridging science to the general public, but also actually informing pharma science policymaking from the side of a patient. And I think it's so, so important that, you cannot assume that people know. They cannot understand, what is it to live with fatigue? What does it mean to take X amount of medications every day? Certain medications, cost, benefits, side effects,
Yes.
All of these things.
And that's the thing, isn't it? And that's what I mean when I say amazing thing that's being done in the lab. Like, paracetamol was discovered in the lab. Everybody, not everybody, but majority of people consume it. We understand what it is and what it does. That's simplistic side of things, right? But then you can imagine when once upon a time it was ibuprofen that was a king and aspirin. But then quickly learned the long-term side effects of that, and then things almost like were withdrawn a little bit in terms of that delivery aspect, but then also encouraging people to take more paracetamol because the effects are way less. So it's getting that awareness and knowledge out, but then communicating and then engaging with the public. That's a key thing, because if the public never took that on board, then we would have seen more damage right now. And the same thing if there were those with bad intentions and not do want to make paracetamol cool. Do you know what I mean? So it's that notion of, okay, how do we come to the table? How can we improve things? How can we take things step forward? I take a combination of medications, you know, some in the morning, some in the evening for different purposes, right? But if I don't take them, I know what it's gonna mean, and I've missed them by accident sometimes, not knowing. But then I'm like, why am I struggling? And then I recount. I'm like, oh, duh, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's the benefits, the cost of things, and things change. And yeah, we just having those conversations.
I'm not going to put my hand up and say, yeah, I forgot my medications. But yes, I think we all have at some point or another. We all like just rattling with all the pills. And I think that's so interesting, because I think it takes so much to really bring medical information usably to someone outside the field. And I know you've also worked with government bodies and pharma companies. Could you maybe talk with us a bit about, your experience in really making medical information usable for someone outside the field, which doesn't have to be general public, but just like outside their specific niche?
Yes, I think one of the ones I can give examples of is when we were commissioned to help with the messaging around bowel cancer. And, there's always been messages out there, but because of what we do and how creative outlook we bring in with our own lived experiences, that great benefit of insight and understanding, we're able to sit down, and again, we took the co-production approach, the understanding of, okay, who's the audience? And then it's the question of, no, not really, who is the audience, and then you dive it down, because one of the worst things to ever say or assume is that everybody's the audience. No, there is actually a need, like you can narrow it down to be very specific, and then everybody still benefits. And that's the beauty of it. And so when we did that campaign, I think it was very powerful, because even the reception was very, very good. I mean, they even put the posters at the Manchester Piccadilly train station, and that was a big deal for us as a health communications, absolutely, as a health agency, because our work, as we always say, you might have seen our work, but you'd have never known it was done by Freshrb Health Media. And that's just the case, because we are in so many ways helping organizations bring that medical side of information out, but then in a tangible way, without it making it too, technical and medical. It's a simplifying of messaging, but not making it simplistic. And one of the things as well is still keeping the accuracy of what it is, right? Not ignoring the fact that it still needs to have that core message at the heart of it, but it's just how you laid it out, how you can communicate and engage with the public. And just to give you an insight, we made it a bit more fun and comic in a sense. And you when you see it, it's basically tissue is involved in a sense, the tissue roll. But it's that thing of, first you laugh, you look at it, you smile, and then the next thing you then read about the messages, and then there's a follow-up kind of QR code to engage with and stuff. And it's this, so it's taking those approaches of, okay, something is very, very medical, but then how do you then translate and flip that so that somebody can just embrace it, in a sense? As similar thing to the cardio conversation aspect. Instead of making people so scared about the side effects. But actually, no, there is more power in you doing something before you even reach down the road, because it's actually it's a long road for you to get to a point where you can't do anything about it. So it's that thing of, oh, actually, instead of just thinking of exercise, for example, which is, unfortunately, you think of exercise, you think of the gym in terms of the image. I don't know about you, but for myself, or if I think of exercise, I'll be thinking of climbing, I don't know, going for a long hike. But actually, what if you just think of it as an activity? And activities are a lot of things we're doing day to day, climbing up the stairs. How often can you do that? Just a short walk back and forth, it's deleting behavioral changes in a positive way that also help with that breakthroughs in research and the medical aspects of things. So creating that intersection. Yeah.
I love that. And I hope you took loads and loads of photos at Manchester Piccadilly. So posing yourself.
We missed it. we missed it. Yes, we missed it. But we know, it's but
to put it back up, just for day or so.
And here's the funny thing, right? Initially it was very, very specific for North Manchester region, but then it ended up being used across Manchester and Greater Manchester, but in a different format, in a sense. But it's that thing of, you do something for a specific population niche, but then the impact is actually wider than that. So that's something you cannot negate when it comes to communicating science and health. Yeah,
absolutely. And I also love that you spoke about activities, not having to be exercise, but also little activities. We had I'm just checking, episode 5, Professor Dr. Alan Dorey and Dr. Sergius Moshos, and spoke with them about the lung and lung health. And it was really interesting because they both said exactly the same. It's sometimes about just getting up 3 times out of the chair, because you use your core muscles and your leg muscles. Yes. And that's the biggest muscles to activate, right? So it can be even simple things like that. But also, I think you and I both, having a chronic illness and having bad days as well, we know that sometimes even going to the toilet is something that you limit yourself because you're too weak to do. So I think that's also something that we bring into this conversation, to know that, even to say to someone, walk up 3 times, a flight of stairs, that is really easy for someone who is healthy, probably, but someone who has, any illness or disability or something that is limiting, they might really struggle with this, right? So saying Absolutely. Everyone can walk up 3 flights of stairs, it's not as simple. So you need to really make this very individual. And I think the other thing, I love that you say simplify, not simple, because I always pick your quotes and then I insert them in my everyday life. So thank you. One important thing that we also spoke about in the past is this emotional baggage that comes often with specific topics, such as, for example, cancer. Everyone either knows someone or has had themselves a cancer journey. And so I don't know anyone who has a positive cancer journey, right? And so I think minding this emotional baggage with most illnesses or medications, etc., is really important. And it has, you have to strike this balance very, very nicely. So what's kind of your approach to striking this balance? You touched upon it with bringing in some humor and then talking about the topic, but what other kind of approaches do you use to strike this balance?
It's knowing that you respect the fact that it's a hard thing to go through, right? Diagnosis is one of the craziest, weirdest thing. I went through a paradigm shift, so from a lived experience, I know what that means. And my friend Babs, even when he tells his story, similar thing. And that's why we're able to kind of help, engage, and just be very empathetic. That's the thing. So bringing in that empathy, but then taking people on that journey. The reason I'm saying that is when you understand that this is crap, pardon my language, this is terrible, to go through, it feels, because at the end of the day, you're the one living through it, you're feeling it. No ME, CFS diagnosis is the same. I know that, for example, right? I'm speaking from a personal perspective. But whenever I have conversations, whether it's on the podcast or in the forums or just somebody messaging me in one of the groups, I go from a position of, I understand how terrible things are. And then I go on the journey of, how can we still find the reason to smile? Because then that brings the quality of life. Because it's the experience that you go through each minute of the day that overall will add up and would determine the value of your, not to go too deep, but the value of your existence in that day, you know? So bringing that positive element in it, and that's not motivational outlook per se, but that inspirational, maybe motivation and inspiration for the long run, because motivation only takes you to a point, right? Inspiration is what takes you further. It's a big drive, but that element of positivity, because at the end of the day, it doesn't do it justice when it's just doom and gloom, because then you're still living with it, right? You're still in that phase. And so there has to be something that then you try to find to just be a little bit positive. Something with the messaging as well. It can be all medical, right? But that's where it ends. You know, if you say triglycerides, whatever, why do I care? But if you simplify it and just say for what it is, fats, you get my point. Like little things like that. Good fats, bad fats, something that somebody can relate to. It even brings that point of, oh, just because I don't know something doesn't mean I can't engage in it. So it's that thing of, just because I'm going through a terrible experience, here I am as a patient, doesn't mean I might not feel a little bit better tomorrow, but then doesn't mean I can't smile. You want to smile when you look yourself in the mirror, even though you look crappy, but you just say, you know what, I'm alive. I'm going through this. I hope the breakthroughs are happening in the lab, whatever medication or treatment pathways they've come up with can help me. And that's the thing. So I'm still on the journey of recovery. I'm still struggling with this every day, but I know I was worse off before. And the person that I'm here today having this conversation, it's a lot. I count it as a lot better, but still way far from how I'd love things to feel. Right now, I'm feeling terrible. And as a cheat code, I use the coffee to power through, right? A very strong coffee. Mm-hmm. But it's because I am enjoying this and I want to be of positive impact, but then also help find solutions. I'm big on creative problem solving. And so, yeah, it's taking that approach, taking that angle and translating that across and just finding the reason to find more solutions, whatever stage things are, because there can be a cure. There might not be a cure, but there's a level of treatment plan and pathway that's at least helping you whether feel better or at least see another day whilst you wait for that better treatment in a sense. And then that's why it's important to have breakthroughs in a sense, but that's a different story for the funders.
Yeah. And let's just go deep for 2 minutes and then we can wrap up. But no, I think the thing is that, so you mentioned a few things, motivation and inspiration. And I think that comes back to the why, right? That we started off with, why do we get up every single day? And I think you and I, we both have a very strong why, very strong motivation and inspiration. But I also love that you mentioned empathy, because I often get asked, so did you get stronger with this disease? And I'm like, no, it almost killed me and it almost broke me. But what it did is it made me so much kinder. And I think that's the thing that I take away from it. Because, if you look in the mirror and you're just pale and then you're like, really just bloated from all the medication and you have steroid moon face where you have Cushing syndrome and stuff and you don't recognize yourself and your hair falls out. And those kind of days are just absolutely hard, right? So you have to be kind to yourself. And once you're kind to yourself, you can then be kind to others. So I kind of want to bring that question back to you. Would you say it is empathy is the main thing that you take away, or what is the main thing that you take away from being ill?
Empathy is big, that's for sure. But having a positive outlook is even bigger in a sense. They play a different role, but it's even bigger because it gives you a focal point, a point to aim at. Okay, I want to head towards that light. That kind of mind. Yeah, and from my own personal experiences, that's what it is. I've carried that on in how we run the organization. It's that thing of, how do we make it better?
Thank you so much. Which also brings me to the end of the episode. And so we want to encourage all the scientists and clinicians to really reach out to us, because we love to help you communicate your work and add impact and insights. So also to the people who listen to us, maybe with a rare disease even, please do connect with us. We'd love to hear your insights. And we also love to, join up forces and bring creativity to empower others. And so, Kondwani, I really want to thank you so much for being here today. I could talk with you for ages, but thank you so much for joining us here today.
No, thank you. Yes, I enjoyed it, had fun, and I'm looking forward to more in the future.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, thank you so much. So you've just heard now from Kondwani Chirwa, whose work spans NHS engagements, public health communication, and creative medical storytelling. So to learn more about his projects, including some of the work that we mentioned today, so he's working with the Manchester Health Film Festival, we will make sure to link it up, but also please do visit the website where you can sign up for the newsletter. We will add a link to a link tree at the bottom of the description. Also do listen to the Everyday People Talking Health podcast, where Kondwani interviews people with lived experience, which is really insightful, and every single episode is really just adding so much value to conversations. And then lastly, his latest project is Cardio Conversations, about which we spoke today as well, which is really great insight into cardiology diseases, but also prevention and how you can include preventative measures into everyday life. And so his email address is info@freshrb.com. We will make sure to link it all. But thank you so much for joining in. And thank you so much again, Kondwani, for joining us here today.
Fantastic. Thank you.
This podcast was produced by Keep It Science, a collaboration between Acorn Scientific Marketing and Zeke's Art for Geeks, two award-winning science communication and marketing agencies based in the UK. If you enjoyed the episode and you're thinking about launching your own podcast, whether it's to share some expert insights, tell your company's story, or build market presence, we'd absolutely love to help you create a podcast with outstanding science and production quality.
So drop us a line at keepitscience@gmail.com. Find us on LinkedIn. And if nothing else, keep it science.